This is Diana Block, your online instructor for business analysis techniques. We're into week 7 of the spring 2014 quarter. And this week you're going to read chapter 8, and I do have the chapter 8 PowerPoint attached here. And you're going to have a discussion assignment, and you're going to have a assignment that consists of 4 problems. And so you've got all the attachments there. Let's go ahead and look directly at the problem, because although they're linear programming, which is the same thing we have been studying over the last couple of weeks, well, prior to the mid-quarter, these problems are a little bit longer linear programming problems. So I want to spend some time telling you how to set these up. So this problem tells you that you're trying to schedule for a restaurant, and we have 6 different start times under which employees or waiters can start. Although they start at specific times, everyone's shift is an 8-hour shift. So that information is given in the problem. So what we are going to look at here is we've got some information about the shifts and start times and the costs per worker. Each worker does cost something different, or each shift can have a different cost. And then we've got the minimum number of workers that have to be started at each shift. So we've got all the information we need to minimize our total cost of scheduling employees. So what we want to do here is enter our objective function, and in this particular case our objective function is going to be 1, because each waiter represents 1 person working a shift. So we want to minimize the number of employees by putting in a formula here that says that the objective function, which is 1 person per shift, times the number of workers for each shift, is minimized. So this is our formula for minimize total cost. The objective function times the number of workers. So each person is going to be 1 shift worker. My constraints are given here. For each particular start time, we need a minimum number of workers. So we're going to put constraints here, for example, 3A to 7A. And then just like we've done before, we're going to put a 1 here, because again each person represents a 1. Now at this 3 a.m. start time, remember, even though we're given the start times in 4-hour blocks, they're going to work 8-hour shifts. So if they start this first shift, they're also going to do their second 4 hours in this last shift. So we're going to put a 1 for every shift that they will have some coverage in. And then you got 7 a.m. and to 11 a.m. And this person is going to cover again 2 4-hour shifts, because they have an 8-hour shift from whatever their start time is. And so you would put all the shifts in, going down here, going down the row, put in each shift, and mark a 1 for the constraint for each shift that they would cover. And again, I'm just giving you a hint that each worker is going to cover an 8-hour shift, so they're going to cover 2 4-hour shifts. So you're going to have 2 1s in each row somewhere for each worker. So then you're going to, it's similar to previous problems, you're going to sum each of these rows. And so then this has to be greater than or equal to the given constraint for that shift. So in this particular line, it's a 3. This 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. shift has to have a minimum of 3 workers. So when we sum this line, this sum here needs to be greater than or equal to 3. So we're going to, of course, sum product, not actually sum here. Let me fix that. This is going to be a sum product like you've done before. And the product of, I'm not going to put the whole formula in, but this is a sum product of your constraints here multiplied times the number of workers. So when you run Excel and it does this calculation, this sum product here needs to be greater than or equal to 3 for that shift. And so for the 7 to 11 a.m. shift, it needs to be greater than or equal to 12. The 11 to 3 needs to be greater than or equal to 16. These are the minimum numbers of workers. So you've done problems like this before. You're going to take each of these lines, multiply it times the number of workers that Excel is going to give you, and then you're going to have your sum product here. And these numbers need to be greater than or equal to the minimum numbers given. So that's the part of that problem to get the constraints in. The rest of it is going to be a simplex LP problem as far as your solving method. So you'll have, the only other thing you have to do is put in your formula here, put in your objective constraints. Remember, when you go to solver, you're going to click minimize. Normally we've been maximizing something, but we want to minimize our total cost, our total number of workers, based on these constraints that we have to have these minimums. So you've done, there's an example problem that's just like this. There's a scheduling problem in chapter 8 that's very similar to this one. Then the next problem, we are working with some grain products, and we are going to determine what is the profit that we can make by creating specific combinations of these ingredients to make a stable feed. So you've got constraints here. The constraints are going to be each of the ingredients that we're given here. You see, we're given ingredients A through E. Then you've got the number of oats in units per pound, the number of grain, mineral units, and the minimum daily requirement. So here's what we need. The minimum daily requirement of A is 6 units. So just like in previous problems, you're going to put in here, for oats, it's 2 units per pound of A. For grain, there's 3 units of pound of ingredient A. For minerals, there's 1 unit per pound of A. You see, I'm getting this information from up here. And so I need to do my sum product here as usual to take these units of this ingredient times the amount to use. And this answer here needs to be greater than or equal to the minimum daily requirements. And you're going to do that for each one of these ingredients. Then you also have another constraint. There's some other requirements here. Let me see what it is. Here's our problem up here. Oh, here we go. Here it is. The stable owner says that we can only produce 6 pounds of feed per day. That's the most that any horse would need to function properly. So we also have a constraint after we do the A, B, C, D, E ingredients. We're also going to have a constraint that says the maximum number of pounds per day must be less than or equal to 6. So this max ingredient is going to be less than or equal to 6. So we're going to enter a 1 for each 1 pound of feed. And then you'll have a sum product formula here that will multiply this line times the amount to use. And that has to be less than or equal to 6. The next problem, we're looking at TV ads. So our constraints are going to be the constraints we're given: TV, radio, billboards, etc. You're going to enter all the newspaper or all the various types of ads you can have. Be aware that one of the constraints is also going to be TV and or radio. You're also going to have a constraint that's billboards and newspapers. So you're going to have constraints listed plus some combinations. You're also going to have a constraint that is cost. So you're going to have all of these different constraints. And for some of these, like TV, you're going to put in, for each TV ad, a 1 so that it multiplies times the objective function, which is your reach. The reach per ad is your objective function. So these numbers are what you're going to enter for the objective function because you want to maximize your reach. So like we've done the other problems, you'll fill in all your constraints. And I'm going to give you a hint on the billboards and newspapers. You're going to enter a negative amount on one of these and 2 positive amounts, because if you combine the billboards and newspapers, it adds a cost and takes a cost off. So I'll let you read the problem and work on that. These are going to be a little bit more challenging, so I'm not giving as much information because we've already covered this type of problem. I want to challenge you to work on it. But again, if you have questions, email me and we'll talk about it more. But I think a lot of people, because we've worked on this already, are going to figure this out and understand more about how to solve the problem by working through it yourself more. But those are the constraints. So we want to have a constraint that says it has to be, your total cost has to be less than your budget, which happens to be $15,000. So that's one constraint, is your budget. And you have to have a minimum number of certain types of ads. So those are constraints. So set your problem up like this and put all your constraint numbers in here, your sum products, and your constraints that are given above. It's written into the into the paragraph what your requirements are. Let's look quickly at number 4. Problem 4, you've got some different stocks. So your constraints here are going to be stocks. Stock 1, stock 2, each stock. Then you've also got a constraint that says your proportion. Your total portfolio can't be more than 1. So you're going to enter proportion constraint. Then you're going to enter an expected return constraint. Your expected returns has to be greater than or equal to 11%. So each of these stocks has to be less than or equal to 35% of the portfolio, but the total portfolio can't be more than 100%, and your expected returns need to be at least 11%. So based on the paragraph information here that you're going to read, your objective function in this case is the beta. The beta information is your objective function. So you are going to I'm sorry, let me make sure I said this right about proportion. Your proportion has to be equal to 1. The total of your portfolio can't be more than 1. That's true. It has to be exactly 100%. You want to put all your stocks together to make exactly one portfolio. So your proportion, you're going to put in a constraint that says that has to equal 1. And then you're going to put in the minimums of each stock. And you're going to put in your expected return has to be at least 11%. Your objective functions are the beta. And then you will be able to determine the proportion of each portfolio that should be in the proportion of each stock that should be in your portfolio. So my 15 minutes is almost up. That's the longest video I can make. So I will leave you with that. If you have questions, challenge yourself to figure these out, because we have worked these type of problems before. But if you have any questions, just make sure you send me an email, send me your spreadsheet, and I'll tell you what you need to do to get on track. But most students have a lot of fun with these and find that they're able to apply what we've learned before and figure these out. So I will look forward to talking with you in the discussion area this week. Have a great week.